The WNBA just witnessed one of the most controversial playoff games in league history. And nobody's talking about what really happened behind closed doors. What you're about to hear will change everything you thought you knew about the Indiana Fever's shocking playoff exit and why Caitlin Clark's teammates are secretly furious with how the league handled their series against Las Vegas. If you're ready for the truth about what's destroying the WNBA from the inside, smash that like button right now because this gets wild. The Indiana Fever's 2024 playoff run ended in absolute chaos. But new information from January 2025 reveals the aftermath was even worse than anyone imagined. Multiple sources inside the organization are now speaking out about what they call the most rigged officiating they've ever experienced. The Game 2 disaster against Las Vegas wasn't just badly officiated, it was orchestrated. 41 fouls in a single game, 16 in one quarter alone. Players hitting the deck on nearly every possession while A'ja Wilson got away with moves that would make an MMA fighter jealous. But here's what nobody knew until now. 3 of the referees from that game have been quietly reassigned for the 2025 season after an internal review found, quote, concerning patterns in their playoff officiating. The league won't admit it publicly, but they know they screwed up. Lexi Hull played through a back injury so severe that team doctors later revealed she risked permanent damage by staying on the court. She dropped 5 three-pointers while basically unable to bend her spine properly, and the Aces targeted her injured back repeatedly throughout the game. Watch the footage again, and you'll see Wilson deliberately driving her shoulder into Hull's lower back at least 7 times. That's not basketball, that's assault. Hull needed intensive physical therapy for 3 months after the series ended and almost didn't return for 2025. She's back now, but sources say she still deals with chronic pain from what happened in Vegas. The most disgusting part is that Wilson laughed about it in the locker room afterward, calling Hull soft for complaining about the contact. But that wasn't the whole story of what destroyed Indiana's championship dreams. Caitlin Clark, who's currently recovering from an ankle injury in early 2025, recently opened up in a private team meeting about how the officiating in that series made her question whether the WNBA even wants small market teams to succeed. Think about it. Vegas generates massive revenue for the league. They have the star power, the market, the connections. Indiana was supposed to be a feel-good story for one round and then bow out gracefully. When they demolished Vegas in Game 1 by 16 points, panic set in at league headquarters. The Fever weren't following the script. Clark's presence was bringing millions of new viewers, but those viewers were supposed to watch her lose gracefully to the establishment, not expose how corrupt the system really is. What happened next would shock everyone who believes in fair competition. Before Game 2, there was a closed-door meeting between WNBA officials and the referee crew. Nobody will go on record about what was discussed, but the foul disparity speaks for itself. Indiana went from controlling the series to being unable to play 5 seconds without a whistle. Aaliyah Boston absorbed more uncalled elbows in Game 2 than most players see in an entire season. She finished with 13 rebounds and 10 points, but team trainers counted 17 separate instances where she took shots to the ribs or back that weren't called. Meanwhile, Wilson got phantom calls every time an Indiana player breathed near her. Boston later said it was the most frustrated she's ever been on a basketball court, feeling like no matter how clean she played, the refs would find something to call against her. The conspiracy goes even deeper when you examine the betting patterns from that game. Massive money poured in on Vegas to cover the spread just hours before tip-off, suggesting insider knowledge about how the game would be officiated. Several prominent sports betting analysts have noted the unusual line movement was consistent with fixed game patterns they've seen in other leagues. The WNBA refuses to address these concerns, but federal investigators are reportedly looking into irregular betting activity surrounding multiple 2024 playoff games. This isn't just about bad calls anymore. This is about the integrity of the entire sport being compromised for profit. If you think this sounds crazy, drop a comment with your thoughts because what I'm about to reveal will blow your mind even more. Sophie Cunningham, who joined Indiana for 2025, recently shared her perspective on the series as someone who watched from the outside. She said every player in the league knew what was happening to Indiana, but nobody could speak up without facing retaliation. Cunningham called it the worst-kept secret in women's basketball that certain teams get preferential treatment in the playoffs. She's been one of the few brave enough to hint at the corruption publicly, which is why fans respect her authenticity so much. The aftermath of Game 2 left lasting scars on the Fever organization. Kelsey Mitchell, who exploded for 34 points in Game 1, was held to just 12 in Game 2 after defenders were allowed to basically tackle her off ball without consequences. She spent the entire offseason reviewing film and couldn't find a single play where Vegas was called for the same contact Indiana got whistled for. Mitchell's considering filing a formal complaint with the Players Association about dangerous play being encouraged by selective officiating. She's documented over 40 instances of uncalled fouls that resulted in Indiana players hitting the floor hard. That's not physical playoff basketball. That's the refs choosing a winner before the game starts. Here's where things get really interesting. Multiple Indiana players have privately admitted they considered walking off the court in protest during the third quarter of Game 2 when the foul calls became absolutely ridiculous. They were getting called for breathing while Vegas players were throwing elbows like it was a street fight. The only reason they didn't walk off was because they knew it would result in massive fines and suspensions that would hurt their careers. But imagine if they had done it. Imagine if an entire team said enough is enough and refused to participate in a rigged game. It would have been the biggest scandal in WNBA history and might have actually forced real change. The league's response to the controversy has been pathetic. They released a statement saying the officiating met their standards, which tells you everything about what their standards actually are. They don't care about fair competition. They care about narratives, market size, and keeping their biggest stars happy. When a small market team with young talent threatens to upset that balance, the league intervenes through officiating to restore order. It's been happening for years, but never this blatantly. The fact that they did it in a playoff game broadcast to millions of new viewers shows how arrogant they've become about their corruption. Sources inside the Fever organization reveal that ownership considered filing a formal protest with the league office, but was warned it would result in draft pick penalties and scheduling disadvantages for 2025. That's right, the league threatened retaliation if Indiana dared to challenge what happened. This is the same league that claims to support player safety and competitive integrity. They're running a protection racket for big market teams, and everyone knows it. The silence from other teams and media members tells you how deep the fear of retaliation runs. Nobody wants to be the next target. What makes this even more infuriating is how the media covered it. Every major outlet focused on Wilson's quote-unquote dominant performance while ignoring that she committed at least 15 uncalled offensive fouls. They celebrated Vegas's toughness while Indiana players were literally being assaulted on the court. The narrative was written before the game even started. Vegas had to win to set up their preferred playoff storyline, and the refs made sure it happened. Sports media is complicit in this corruption because they need access to players and teams for content. Challenge the league's narrative and suddenly your media credentials get revoked. The psychological impact on Indiana's young players can't be overstated. Several rookies on the team have said that series made them question whether skill and hard work even matter in this league. When you watch teammates get physically abused while the refs protect the other team's stars, it breaks your faith in the sport. The Fever had multiple players seek sports psychology help during the offseason to process what happened. That's not normal postseason disappointment. That's trauma from being cheated on national television while everyone pretends it didn't happen. But here's the thing that should terrify every WNBA fan. This isn't going away. The same patterns are already emerging in early 2025, with certain teams getting favorable whistles in crucial moments. The league learned they can manipulate outcomes without consequences because media won't call them out and fans have nowhere else to watch women's basketball at this level. They've created a monopoly on corruption, and they're getting bolder about using it. Unless players unite and demand transparency in officiating assignments and review processes, this will only get worse. Caitlin Clark's injury situation adds another layer to this mess. She's been out with an ankle problem that many believe resulted from accumulated damage during that physical playoff series. Defenders were allowed to undercut her repeatedly without calls, creating dangerous landing situations that eventually caught up with her. The league's biggest draw for new fans is now sidelined partly because they refused to protect her when it mattered. They chose Vegas's advancement over Clark's health, and now they're paying the price with lower viewership in 2025. Karma has a way of catching up, but the damage to Clark and her teammates is already done. The most shocking revelation comes from a former referee who worked that series but quit afterward in disgust. Speaking anonymously, they confirmed there was pressure from the league office to, quote, manage the series toward a preferred outcome. They were told Indiana winning would be bad for the league's expansion plans in major markets. This referee said they've never seen such blatant manipulation in their entire career and couldn't continue being part of a corrupt system. They provided documentation showing unusual communication patterns between league officials and the referee crew before Game 2, strongly suggesting coordination to influence the outcome. Indiana's front office is now stuck in an impossible position. They know what happened was wrong, but speaking out means facing retaliation that could destroy their ability to compete. They've chosen to focus on building through the draft and developing young talent, but how can you develop players when they know the deck is stacked against them in big moments? The psychological damage to team culture is massive. Players don't trust that their hard work will be rewarded fairly, which affects everything from practice intensity to long-term commitment to the organization. What nobody's talking about is how this affects the WNBA's credibility with new fans who tuned in for Caitlin Clark. These viewers aren't stupid. They saw what happened in that series, and many haven't returned. The league had a golden opportunity to showcase competitive basketball to millions of new eyes, and instead they exposed themselves as a rigged operation that predetermines outcomes. Social media metrics show engagement dropped 70% after that series ended, and it hasn't recovered in 2025. Congratulations, WNBA, you played yourself. The Players Association needs to step up and demand reform, but they're compromised too. Many player reps have endorsement deals with the same companies that sponsor the big market teams. They won't bite the hand that feeds them, even if it means their fellow players get screwed. The union's silence on the officiating disaster speaks volumes about where their priorities really lie. They'll fight for higher salaries, but won't fight for fair competition. That tells you everything about how deep the corruption goes in this league. Here's my challenge to every WNBA fan watching this. Don't let them memory hole what happened to Indiana. Share this video, demand accountability, and stop pretending the league has integrity when they've proven repeatedly they don't. The only way this changes is if fans make enough noise that sponsors get nervous. Money is the only language these people understand. When corporate partners start questioning why the product looks rigged, maybe we'll see real reform. Until then, small market teams like Indiana will keep getting screwed while the league protects its chosen franchises. If you made it this far, you're one of the real ones who actually cares about the truth. Hit subscribe right now because I'll keep exposing what the mainstream media won't touch. The WNBA wants you to forget about this scandal, but we're not gonna let that happen. The Indiana Fever deserved better. Their fans deserved better, and most importantly, the players who put their bodies on the line deserved better than being sacrificed for a predetermined narrative. This league needs a reckoning, and it starts with fans demanding better.